It was a cool autumn evening in the city of Fairview when Danielle Carter, a 42-year-old community organizer, mother of two, and newly announced candidate for mayor, drove home after a long meeting. The back seat of her SUV was piled with campaign flyers, her own face staring back at her with the slogan, "A voice for change." She was exhausted but hopeful, thinking about her children waiting for her at home and about the future she was fighting to build. But as the street curved and the road darkened, red and blue lights flared in her rearview mirror, her heart dropped. She knew she hadn't been speeding. She knew she hadn't run a stop sign. Still, she pulled over carefully, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than she realized. Two officers stepped out of the cruiser. Their movements were slow, deliberate, and heavy with authority. One shined a flashlight into her window, his voice curt as he demanded her license and registration. When she calmly asked why she was being stopped, he snapped back, "Your taillight's out." Danielle blinked. She knew it wasn't. She had replaced it only 2 weeks ago. This wasn't about a taillight. This was about her. As she rolled down the window further, the second officer circled the car like a wolf, his eyes scanning everything inside. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Home," Danielle answered firmly. "From where?" he pressed. "From a community meeting." The corner of his mouth curled. "At this hour?" His tone wasn't just suspicious. It was accusatory, as though being out at night was itself a crime. Danielle's jaw tightened. She knew the game, the script she had seen too many times before. Suspicion, intimidation, humiliation. The first officer's flashlight caught the flyers in her back seat. He pulled one up with a smirk, reading it aloud. "Danielle Carter for mayor." He gave a mocking laugh. "Mayor? You? That's rich." Danielle kept her hands on the wheel, her voice steady. "Am I free to go?" The smirk disappeared. "Step out of the vehicle," the officer ordered. The night air was cold against her skin as she stood by the roadside. One officer kept questioning her, asking what she was really doing in this part of town, while the other rummaged through her car without consent. Danielle stayed calm, but inside her chest, her heart thudded painfully. She thought of her daughter Jada and her son Marcus waiting at home. What if she didn't make it back? What if this night ended differently than she hoped? But then, across the street, movement caught her eye. A teenager stood quietly in the shadows, holding up a phone, recording everything. The officers hadn't noticed. Danielle had. For the first time that night, a spark of hope ignited. The questions grew sharper, the threats less subtle. "We could take her in for resisting," one officer muttered. Danielle lifted her chin, looking him dead in the eyes. "I'm not resisting," she said firmly. "I'm asserting my rights. And I know them better than you think." Her calm rattled them. She spoke not as a victim, but as a leader. And then she said the words that changed everything. "I'm Danielle Carter. I'm a candidate for mayor of this city. And tomorrow morning, everyone will know exactly how you treated me tonight." The officers froze. Confidence drained from their faces. For the first time, uncertainty crept into their eyes. The teenager's phone kept recording, its red light blinking like a warning sign. They had cornered the wrong woman. Within 24 hours, that video exploded across Fairview. Local news replayed the footage with bold captions. "Mayoral candidate harassed by police." The city erupted in debate. Was it racial profiling? A routine stop gone wrong? Or a sign of something deeper, something rotten within the system meant to protect? Days later, Danielle stood on the courthouse steps in front of a sea of cameras. Her navy blazer was sharp, her campaign pin glinting under the flashbulbs. She looked out over the crowd and spoke with conviction. "I was pulled over not because of a taillight, but because of who I am and what I represent. This is why I'm running for mayor, because power without accountability erodes trust, and without trust, we cannot have justice." Her words struck like fire. Donations poured in. Volunteers doubled overnight. People who had never cared about politics now stood shoulder to shoulder at her rallies, chanting her name. The police department scrambled to defend itself, launching an internal investigation, placing the officers on leave. But the damage was done. The stop meant to silence her had instead made her stronger, more visible, and unstoppable. That night, as she tucked her children into bed, Danielle allowed herself the smallest smile. "They tried to silence me on the side of the road," she whispered softly, "but instead, they gave me a microphone." Yet while the city celebrated her resilience, shadows still lingered. Anonymous L